My name is Sharmeen Khan. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and one of the founders of OpSmart Global. We are a food safety supply chain and a traceability software company. We deal mostly with the agri-tech food space. So as I go through the presentation, most of my examples will stem from that because that's the work I do, and that's where my mind is always at, is in food, off work and on work. So regardless. So today we're talking about increasing profitability by mapping the supply chain. So I think through COVID, regardless of whether you were in the industry or out of the industry, somebody just at home, we all heard supply chain on our news broadcasts. It is an issue that was in the forefront. We all heard about containers stuck at ports. Either they were at the shipping end or the receiving end, the lack of employees, the lack of labor shortages, the lack of trucks, truckers, all of that. So supply chain is something that has been forefront to all of us. So moving forward, if we talk about increasing profitability by mapping the supply chain, let's do something first and let's define what supply chain mapping means. So supply chain mapping, if you just Google it, the definition you get is it's a collecting, sorting, and sharing of data, which is, I think, a very important word, is the sharing of data about the creation of a product in order to increase visibility, which is also important if you speak about traceability, into its production, its process, and movement. And it is essential to improve efficiency, reduce error, disruption, stay competitive. So, if you look at the illustration to the left, something very simple, consumers want it. There's demand, raw material. If we bring food again into it and we talk about Philadelphia cream cheese, couldn't find it in grocery stores. It was in demand in my home where we love our bagels and cheese. The problem was not that the company couldn't create the cream cheese. The product problem was that the tubs they put the cream cheese in were sitting in a port somewhere and they couldn't get them. So therefore, the suppliers never got them, so that it could not be manufactured, so it could not be distributed. So the key to supply chain mapping is knowing where your goods are. However, the issue with knowing where your goods are, and the sharing of data can only happen in our world of where we're trying to build efficiency, is if you move the data from analog to digital. So, and this is not something that's happening in some areas, it's happening throughout the industry, where people are still using paper and pencil and handwritten documents in their production process and not digitizing them. So an example again from one of our clients that we're in conversation with is they are a flour producing company. They on their upstream product supply chain, when they get the grains delivered to their mills, all the documentation that comes in from the trucks about the trucks, of the logistics of the truck and the movement of the good, about the product that they have transported, whether it's organic and the organic certification, and multiple other things as far as what farm the product grew on and so on and so forth, is all on paper. So our conversations with them is finding a way, an efficient way, a simple way of digitizing all of that analog documentation, adopting it into a digital format that is readable by our company's software and their other software, because once it enters the grinding and the milling process for their flour production, they're on top of their game. They know what's going on. They know where production is, lot number, batch number, all of that. But the entire supply chain mapping it, they don't know where it is. And it leads to business transformation. Sometimes it's a painful process. Sometimes it's a process that the companies avoid. However, the world you and I live in, with Amazon and with our cars being computers now and all, the longer a company fights it, the higher the cost it is to them in the long run. So moving forward, digitization improves supply chain management. I think we all kind of understand that. But what does it do if you apply it to real world examples? It gives you faster access to information. You know where things are at all times, regardless of at what point of the supply chain they're in, whether in production or they're in their delivery process. Increased productivity. When you're not involving humans at every step of the process, which does slow it down. We are good at what we do, but we're also good at making mistakes, and we do call out sick, and we do have human issues, and therefore it does slow productivity down. You lower operation costs because you decrease labor. You improve your decision making because the data you have collected through your supply chain allows you to make better decisions, because you can take all the data throughout the supply chain of, say, again, if we speak of Philadelphia cream cheese, where did the milk come from? Where did the other ingredients come from? Where did the packaging come from? Where is the backlog? What is being produced efficiently? What is not being produced efficiently? And then take it one step further to the sale end of it. The data that is collected in the mapping of the production of the good can then be used to further create business intelligence to make retail and sales decisions, because you know where things were shipped and where they sold better, at what time of day, what time of month, what location, what neighborhood. You can capture all of that information, and information is knowledge. Knowledge empowers any company to be able to make better decisions. Improve security. Again, same thing. When things are on paper, you're hoping that your proprietary information about the development of your product, whether it be food, whether it be a pharmaceutical, drug, is secure, because your employees are going to lock that drawer and they're going to lock that door, and they will not share it with anybody. However, we all know that's not the case. Things get left on counters and tables. And prior to doing this work, I used to work for Department of Defense, and it happens everywhere. And there are protocols by DoD, but there's not protocols within our industry, especially food. So what computer systems allow you to do is they allow you to build in access, permission-based access to your information. So you can design your systems so that when you have employees on the production line, they only access the information they need to build that product, to pack that product, to weigh the product, because that's all they do. That's all the information they need. It's on a need to know basis. When you go into mid-level management, they of course need more information. You share what is needed with them. And of course, when you're sitting in the executive suites, you can have access to all the information, because the software has been designed to be permission-based, and your information stays secure, because what you pay your suppliers, or what you pay your freight company, or what elements are being put in, or what items are being put into your product, should not be shared unless that person needs to know and is trusted. So it definitely improves security within your supply chain and within your organization as a whole. Higher mobility of data. So data, we know we all have our smartphones, thank God. We can look up everything on Google, know what's going on. Likewise, when you're talking about production of goods, processing and delivery and shipment of goods, if you're using applications that are if you're using a software that is application based, then you can download that application, and you know where the goods are based. You can look on that app at any time on your smartphone, on your computer, on whatever device that application works on. Or if you're web-based and cloud-based, then you can look at it anywhere and you have higher mobility, higher access to your information. Now, why is that something that actually is extremely important? We're all working from home. I'm sitting in my study at home, and I'm able to share this information with you. You're sitting, I'm assuming many of you are sitting in very comfortable offices in your own homes and not in your office at work. And being able to have mobility of data allows people to stay productive, stay involved. We all learned all about Microsoft Teams and Google Works and all of that other amazing stuff that has made business more efficient and brought costs down, because we realize we no longer have to drive and fly our employees to the other corners of the world. Companies like Accenture are redesigning their cost basis because companies are saying, well, we don't need you to fly to Australia anymore and house you for 6 weeks, because we know you can do this for 4 weeks sitting in your office in wherever you are, and we only want you for 2 in Australia. So higher mobility of data is definitely increasing profitability and decreasing cost for most companies. Automation of business processes. Again, you're not having that employee. In my next slide, I have an example, and that will explain the automation even more. It's automated. Things are moving on along a conveyor belt and not having to be picked up and moved, not having to be labeled. All of that automation makes the process much easier. Improve customer experience when you go at the other end of automation. And since we're a traceability provider, our goal, our end goal, and what we all want is that the lettuce bag or the bag of cucumbers that's on your grocery store, it should have a QR code that you as a consumer, when you go in to buy that bag of romaine lettuce, you can scan the QR code and you can get information about the farm, the day of harvest, the day of expiry, the day of packaging, where it grew, if it's organic, if it's local. Joe's farm 30 miles down the road harvested these apples, and we can connect with them. It improves the customer experience. It improves profitability because you are creating a story for your customer to connect with. And I think through COVID, the other thing we all kind of realizes we really want to know where our food comes from. And so having a story, a local, and I live out in Virginia in Loudoun County, and here we talk about local or loco. Loudoun County, loco is what everybody wants. It's the best experience to have. You support your neighbor and you provide your children with a locally grown, low carbon footprint food. So, and it's environmentally friendly, less paper, less trees, all of that good stuff. Disaster recovery and recall management is extremely important in my food line of work, especially, again, if we speak of romaine lettuce, recall management, knowing where that lettuce grows is highly important. Did it come from Yuma, Arizona, where we've had all the recalls, or did it grow in my backyard here somewhere in, Loudoun County, in Hagerstown, Maryland, or somewhere local where I know it's nearby and it wasn't involved in the recall? And then when you go to do a recall, are you having to pull out, FDA comes in, says, hey, we want a recall. We want you to trace this for us. Are you having to go through files and sheets of paper, going through paper documents, and putting together a document file of like 40, 50 sheets of paper or not more, and the human resource required to do that? Or are you going into your computer system and saying, oh, you want to recall this bag of lettuce? Let me put in the lot number, and the entire documentation of that bag of lettuce comes up. You print it out, 5 minutes, you're done. Human resource is a person of 1 rather than people of 15 looking through file cabinets. So let's talk about a real example, because when you talk about supply chain mapping and traceability, it's a pretty big topic. But so if we bring it in and we talk about supply chain mapping, traceability, and increasing profitability. This is another one of our companies that we work with. This is what they were doing. If you see the first picture, if a handwritten document is actually a seeding production document. You'll see seed names, seed numbers, amounts that they actually seeded, on what day, what employee, how much, quantity, everything was written by hand. And the next sign is a handwritten sign that went into there. That's rosemary that they grow. It's all organic. It's fabulous. When you go to the greenhouse, it smells like heaven. But that sign was handwritten. So, and you're talking about plants where there's humidity and water and wet hands, all sorts of things. So many things can go wrong at that level that, it's not even worth discussing. But if we talk about the previous slide that we were discussing about access to information. So this organization had a handwritten document at seeding, handwritten document at nursery, at harvest, at seeding, at nursery, at greenhouse, at harvesting, at production, and at packaging. So they had about 7 different places where they had to have handwritten documents. Each document was handwritten by multiple employees. Each document then was typed into a computer system. Not all the computer systems are connected. Some sort of a data Excel sheet form. They were all obviously not connected. They were on different computers. If you needed to do something, you had to go into different systems, find them, and hope that somebody typed this information incorrectly, because 1020, or did she say, or did she write a 2, or did she write a 7? Who knows? So there was a lot of errors. So what happened when they started using a digitized system? They had fast access to information. They increased productivity because the redundancy of data entry and handwritten documents was reduced. They went to an entry screen on an iPad. They lowered operational costs. The labor cost is obviously, right there. Then there's so many other places where they were able to lower their operation costs, improve decision-making, because it all went into one area, into a cloud, where the managers and the C-suite executives could see exactly what was growing where at what time at any time of day. Improve security. The sheets weren't flying around. Their water, their soil, their harvesting, what they were harvesting where, was all secure in a computer system. Higher mobility of data. Obviously, sheets of paper can't go from offices in Detroit to offices in California. However, when it's digitized, everyone has access to that information. The higher mobility, automation of business processes. Once the item was seeded, and the lot number was assigned, that lot number showed up every time they scanned a barcode, because then a barcode was produced with that data, and it made it automated. Improve customer experience, because now they're putting QR codes on their packages. It will be scanned, and they can look up all sorts of interesting information about the product they're purchasing. Environmentally friendly, obviously, the paper and the plastic is no longer being used. And when they have to do a recall, it takes them 5 minutes to do it. And that's exactly, I'm actually right on time. So that's 20 minutes for, and I'm done with my presentation. Mike, do you want me to stop sharing my screen so we can go to Q&A, or should I leave my slides on?
You can leave the Q&A slide on for the time being. Thank you. And thank you,
You're
Charmaine,
welcome.
for your presentation. Really appreciate it. It was great stuff. And we'll get into questions here in just a second. The first question I have is, you talked about the flower industry. What other areas are you aware of that aren't digitizing? And do you know what their justification is?
So every single industry, you can talk about produce, like we did about this this herb company that we're working with, flour. Then we work with poultry companies. Poultry companies are infamous for avoiding digitizing. You can talk about the pork industry, which is working at it very, very hard. But they're also not doing it. So I think it's not a matter of which other industry. I think it's all industries, because we are all struggling to move farmers and processors from paper to digital formatting, because a lot of the push in the agri-tech space is coming from FSMA. The law that is now in November will become law, Food Safety Modernization Act. So a lot of the agri-tech space is very active in digitizing, but I see it everywhere. I see it in poultry, I see it in swine, I see it in grains, everywhere.
Great, thank you. Another question we received is, have you seen much consumer interest in the mobility of data?
Yes, absolutely. I think people are very interested in what's going on. I think the US customer is a little bit late to the game. If you especially travel to Europe or Southeast Asia, you will see customers being very aware, and they have been digitizing their supply chains much earlier than us. But I think COVID has made people aware, and people wanted to know where their products came from. So yeah, definitely. If you go to any consumer food safety, there's a conference happening March of next year. It's on foodborne illness, and that is completely an organization and a conference that is consumer driven. And all they want to talk about is foodborne illness and how it can be avoided and how to empower the customer.
Great, and so going along with that last question, how can consumers get a better understanding of how this technology can work for them?
Education. So I think this definitely falls into the lap of organizations like AIM, organizations like IFPA or IAFP, both of them, Institute of Food Professionals and Institute of or International Association of Produce Association. I think we need to educate the consumer to start asking. I think the government needs to step up and say, do you know where your chicken came from? I think there's a lot of stuff that the government can do, but industry can do also, groups such as AIM and others, and letting the consumer know they have the right to know and they have the capability to know. Because with any package that Amazon ships us, we know where it is, when it's coming, it's sitting in Bedford, Pennsylvania, or wherever. There's no reason why we shouldn't know where our lettuce and our eggs are coming from. I think it's education.
Yep, that's a great answer. And I believe it was in the rosemary example. Do you know if there was resistance from employees when digitization was implemented?
Not at all. They're very excited. They're super excited because it will make their job easier, and they will be able to have a better idea of what's in stock. Because sometimes what happens is that things get planted and they get put into the greenhouse, and then they don't remember what is where, and things end up going bad and not being harvested on time. So they're thrilled that now they know exactly, because every morning they get a to-do list, and the to-do list will tell them you're harvesting lot number 547 rosemary, and it's this shelf and this row, and they know exactly where to go. They know where to harvest it. They pull it out, they take it, or move it to the greenhouse, or they move it to the different rooms depending what level of process that product is in. So no, they're actually loving it because it's made their job easier. And it's also, and I know not really supposed to speak of our software, but the software, because it's digitized, it's multilingual. So it's in Spanish. And so instead of them trying to guess what it said and trying to do it by rote memory, they're actually being able to, move products faster and easier. And it's a great deal of, showing a great deal of respect to the staff that we get you and we want to make your job easier. So no, they're loving it.
And then another question we have is, what is the implementation process of going from paper to digital?
So the first step is deciding to do it. The second step is, and here I have to draw from my own experience. So what we do as a second step is we gather all of your paper and all of your digital, because every company has some digital. All of us have our Excel sheets, have some sort of a system that we've developed that's working for us. And we collect everything. And then all of that is collected and put into one place as a beta. That beta is then, you look at it, you decide it's a testing, and then you get a final document, a final product at the end. And so it can be very easy as long as we get the information. If information is shared with any software developer, not just us, they can give you a product that works, but you have to share the information. You have to be open to sharing the information.
Okay, great. And then we have a question. In your experience, growers or producers are more targeted than coops or food manufacturers in this new compliance?
What was the growers and what was the last
Growers
part of
or
the question?
producers are more targeted than COOPS. I wonder if
Oh,
they mean
oops.
corporations.
Corporations. So FSMA applies to everything that FDA has right over. So even the grain company I spoke of, the grain itself is USDA. The grain FSMA doesn't apply to the growing of the grain. However, once they start milling it, it becomes FDA. So then FSMA applies to that. So it depends on who is responsible for your product. If you're a USDA company, and what you do, like cattle is USDA, or the feed for cattle is USDA, but once the animal is slaughtered, it becomes FDA. There's overlap and it's confusing. It depends where you are. So if you're FDA, FSMA applies. If you're not FDA, FSMA does not apply. However, that shouldn't stop anyone from digitizing their supply chain, because it is just a matter of building efficiency and understanding what you have and where the other thing this herb company realized was waste. They had no way of measuring waste of what they seeded to what they harvested. There are multiple places where they were losing product. How much they were kind of guessing at, they were just doing ballparks, but now they're getting much more percentages and concrete information. So yeah, it's kind of gray on what covers where, but I will stop there because I know there's another talk in 1 minute.
Yep. No, and thank you, Charmaine, for answering these questions. Greatly appreciate it. And if you have additional questions for her, I'm sure you will share your contact information.
Thank you.